these aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden, and it is 5 Fact Friday. I've already been knocked off my rails by being given tea in a cup that you can't drink out of. It's impossible. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another 5 Fact Friday with me, Charlie Lambden. It's Friday the 20th of February. Just quickly, that. So one of the facts that I'm not including in this week's 5 Fact Friday is that the ONS put out average national house price figures, which are just guff to be ignored because the way they calculate them can't be checked, and it's a single figure to represent the whole UK. But the Financial Times did something which I think really helps underline the pointlessness of an average. Okay, so that on the screen right there is a breakdown done by the Financial Times using land registry data, broken down by property type: detached, semi, terraced, and flats, and then further broken down by region. Now, even that is still not going to tell you what's happening to exactly the kind of properties you're looking at. But it's very, very useful for you to see that house prices do different things for different property types in different parts of the country. So if you only take one thing away from this video today, it's ignore national house price news, national average house price news. Always ignore it, right? In the context of your individual move, ignore it. There are other contexts under which national averages can be useful for macroeconomic reasons and calculations of housing stock, that kind of stuff. But as a home mover, they are utterly, utterly meaningless, because no matter what they're saying, up or down, they're never an accurate reflection of what's happening with the properties that affect you. Okay, so stop showing that for now. I'm then going to quickly run through the 5 actual facts of the day and do the headlines before I get into them. The theme of today's 5 Fact Friday, though, is why, if you are a seller, waiting won't work, right? Waiting won't work. I'll explain exactly why. I'll explain that there's information that shows you why it won't work, generally speaking. So fact number 1, long-term empty homes numbers. So the number of officially empty homes that are long-term empty is rising. There isn't a national housing shortage, but there is a social housing shortage. Fact number 2, and by the way, this is one of the things: you fix housing, you fix everything, okay? And that's probably the number 1 problem. If you fix the social housing shortage, you fix many other problems directly as a result of that. Fact number 2, the Bank of England says that minimum wage increases are pricing the young out of jobs, which is something that all of us who are employers know. It is historically, repeatedly the case, and it's something that ideologists just choose to ignore because it sounds good. We're going to pay lower paid people more. Yay! Oh, but less of you are going to have jobs. Anyone who cheers for that policy is actively avoiding verifiable, repeated instances of it being a bad idea. It's not that I don't want people to earn more money. Of course I do. Everyone wants everyone to earn more money, but mandating wage levels in what's supposed to be a free market is always a mistake. Government, stay out of it. Number 3, on the same point, right? UK youth unemployment exceeds EU youth unemployment for the first time. And this is before the newly increased minimum wage levels bite in April. Okay, so it's just going to get worse. There's rising unemployment, there's rising youth unemployment, and we haven't even seen the worst of the minimum wage hikes yet. And yes, there are some people who will be individually, personally better off, but the economy as a whole and employment as a whole, and young people in particular as a cohort, will be worse off. And there's no disputing that, by the way. And it's not because anyone wants rich people to make more money that we don't want minimum wage people to actually earn more money. Of course we do. It's such a tired old trope, that argument. Rightmove. So fact number 4, Rightmove fudges its monthly price index headline to cover up flat asking prices. Yes, first time I've ever seen them do this. They have deliberately not updated the monthly price change. I'll show you in a minute. And fact number 5, waiting won't work with unemployment persistently rising if you are a seller hoping for a higher house price. Sorry, lots of H's there. And I've got some information to go into there. So the message I'm going to be trying to get across on today's 5 Fact Friday is that if you are a seller and you want to actually move, you have to meet the market for your home. That requires you to have chosen an agent that doesn't overprice your home. If you have an agent that overprices your home, you've already compromised your chances of getting full market value for your home, because everyone in the market for a home like yours will have seen yours come to the market and dismissed it as overpriced. When you then have to reduce the price, if you want to move, you will then get a diluted amount of interest from people who think, this seller just wants too much money, and therefore there's no point going to view because they're not going to accept their offers, etc. It really is impossible to drink out of this mug. And in any market, right, if you have overpriced your property compared to the market for your property, in a rising market, you can wait, and eventually the market will rise to meet your price. I mean, sometimes people will wait 1 or 2 years. That's how long people wait, even in a rising market. That's how badly people overprice their homes. But in a flat or falling market, which many areas of the UK are, and especially certain property types, I keep on hearing stories of sellers going, well, we haven't been able to sell out. Our property just won't sell. So we're going to take it off the market and wait. And many of you will regret doing that. Right. Okay. Fact number 1. Just say a quick good morning. Who we got here? Yachek, good morning. Sarge, good morning. Andrew Taylor, cleaning windows, George Formby style. Nigel Saunders, good morning. Happy Friday. Dogma, Rick Heath, Scarlett, Jeff Hiller. Thank you very much, Jeff. Glad you like my t-shirt. My kids made this for me. And yeah, Mr. AM02000 says, Mr. Alliteration is on form this morning. I do enjoy my alliteration. I think it's just a little bit more, when you're dealing in the dry content, that is the housing market, anything that can color it up a bit is good, right? Malcolm Brownson saying, interest rates rise in the States. Is that a question or a prediction, or were you reporting something's happened? Right, fact number 1. Let's get it up on the screen. Just a second. Okay, so this is in a relatively obscure publication, which is the West Bridgeford Wire, who report 1,000 council homes across Nottinghamshire stand empty. And they talk about a long-term problem with empty homes, a symptom of a much bigger malaise. The shortage of council homes and affordable housing in general is a significant problem that has been plastered across local and national headlines for years. Waiting lists have been soaring, and a significant portion of the reason for this is the right to buy policy, under which millions of houses have been sold at discounted rates to the tenants. What they should have added there is, and then not replaced. Had they been replaced, that wouldn't have been a problem. It was a good policy until they didn't replace them. Nowhere near enough council homes are built to replace them. Correct. Seemingly endless waiting lists and rising homelessness have been a consequence of this. Correct. And now new figures show that there are 998 council homes across the city and county. This is just a local area waiting for renovation. All right. Now, so they're waiting for renovation. The point is that The government, local and national governments, have been pouring £2 billion a year into temporary accommodation, which, whilst that provides an immediate relief, it doesn't solve any problems. And so the underlying problem has been getting bigger as government policy after government policy after government policy from successive governments has exacerbated the homelessness problem and the shortage of social housing. And the point that I want to make is this. There are 2 points here. Number one, councils are terrible at getting around to and updating social housing. So for people who go, oh, we don't need business people running councils, honestly, if you have business people running these councils, there would be so much more efficient and effective updating of these properties that need maintenance and refurbishment, because the business people would go, hang on a second, it's costing us more money to pay for bed and breakfasts and hotels than it would cost us to refurbish these houses. It's an obvious basic accounting business thing, but councils aren't run by business people, so they just don't actually think in those terms, and that's one of the reasons that we end up in this problem. The other reason that, so I get a lot of stick for saying that there isn't a housing shortage. I want to clarify something. I've also always said that there is a massive shortage of social homes, and if you solve the social home shortage, which is completely doable if a decision is just taken to do it, you kill 2 birds with 1 stone. You massively save, in the long run, save taxpayer money on wasted temporary accommodation costs. You massively save money on the reduction in welfare, as the people who would have been trapped in temporary accommodation where you can't live a normal life could otherwise have been living in a functioning home where they can do their own laundry and cook their own food, and would have been able to get on with life and get out of the welfare trap. Okay? But much more than that, and this is the thing that no one talks about, is that the reason rents are so expensive is because we, as private individual tenants trying to find places to rent, are competing with government and councils having to pay private rents to house people that they are legally obliged to house. Okay? So this is a point, like, if the government met its own housing obligations by building enough social homes and retaining ownership of them, not outsourcing it to HMOs, but actually building, owning, and managing its own social housing stock in an intelligent, tax efficient, and financially efficient way, rents in the rest of the market would come down. So doable. So doable. And the number one reason it isn't happening? Ideology. Baseless, mathematically flawed ideology. And ideologies are things that sound good, but don't stack up when under scrutiny, right? Oh, we think young people on low wages should earn more money. Well, that sounds good. Let's vote for that. Sounds great. Why not? Who wouldn't love that? But if increasing minimum wage by law was a sustainable solution, we could just make everyone earn 100 grand a year, couldn't we? And the government going, right, we now pass a law that says everyone has to earn 100 grand a year. There we are, fixed it, solved it. Oh, hang on a second, that's not sustainable. For the same reason as it isn't sustainable to start forcing increases in employment costs on businesses. What's happening? Unemployment's rising, number of businesses going out of business is rising. And people, there are fewer jobs for people. The pain of ideology is acute and felt by all. It really is. Right, that's fact number 1 and rant number 1 over. And by the way, all of these facts, or most of them, are underlining the point that waiting won't work if you are a seller hoping for a better price. And in fact, it doesn't work in lots of different ways. Whatever the market's doing, it's a flawed assumption. Much like minimum wage ideology is a flawed assumption. Right. So this is the Bank of England pointing out that minimum wage hike hikes unemployment for the young, says Bank of England. All right. The link to this is below for those of you who want to go and read it. But I think it's important that to note that it is the Bank of England pointing this out. That's the point. That's why I think this is a fact worth reporting in 5 Fact Friday, because interest rates are not the number one driver of house prices. Employment and wages is the number one driver of house prices and housing market and people being able to afford a home. By far the number one, right? And you might think, oh, no, it's not. What about mortgages? Well, mortgages are based on A, people having a job, and B, how much they earn. So when you've got, and I want you to think about this medium and long term, in the next 5 to 10 years, our population is going to decline because our birth rate, even amongst recently arrived legal migrants, our birth rate is not replacement rate. Okay, so 5 to 10 years from now, this is why house builders are going, there's just not going to be the demand, so there's no point building so many houses. More and more houses are going to be becoming empty as generations pass on. And with these figures, you can see that in the long, unless something radical happens, right, something unexpected and radical happens, this employment situation is going to continue to get worse and worse and worse. And that is what's going to undermine sellers waiting for house prices to go up more than anything else, right? That is why you can't expect it. And anyone thinking, well, if we just wait for the market, and I mean, I've heard it this week. That is sellers waiting for a rising housing market when there's rising unemployment is a bit like people thinking that hiking minimum wage is going to make everyone better off. If you do the maths, you'll work out it doesn't work. Who else we got this morning? Kicking Mustang, good morning. AK, Darren Westbury, Ramble and Root, Capricious. Hello, Capricious. Haven't seen you for a while. Graham Lycett, Aldor Banner, Tim Tree Frog. Okay, some interesting comments here. Yeah, exactly that. Right. Okay, so next fact number 3. Because I really want to make this point. This is the separate point that UK youth unemployment, and there is nothing funny about this. For anyone who's got kids, young kids, just transitioning out of being children into being adults who need to earn a living, this is really depressing news. And it is very much as Stig foretold. So UK youth unemployment surpasses European youth unemployment for the first time ever. And again, when you see this as a wave of people, when you don't get off to a good start in your career in life, it starts to erode your future chances as well. And this is why this is a doubly bad and doubly sad fact. Because not only is it going to mean that sellers waiting for a rising housing market are going to be waiting forever, it also means that the rising number of unemployed young people are going to be seeing effectively their life prospects decaying as well. And it's a genuine tragedy, and it is an entirely predictable outcome of the policies of this government, and is what I warned about before the last election. It's very, very sad, and it's very, very frustrating. It was clearly obvious what was going to happen, and they have done what we said was going to happen, and it has had the effects that we said was going to happen. If you remember, just after this government came to power, 100 of the largest employers in this country wrote to the government saying, your policies are going to be devastating for employment in this country. And the government didn't listen for reasons I will never understand. Right. So if you're a seller watching this and you're waiting for house prices to go up, it's not a strategy. If you already couldn't get them, it's not a strategy, because house price growth is going to get weaker and weaker and weaker nationally, I think, with regional variations, of course. But yeah, we are now 15.3%. That's like 1 in 6 young people, 16 to 24-year-olds, unemployed. Sorry, guys. I'm genuinely sorry. Sorry that we haven't voted in better government and held them to account to deliver you a better future. Right. Okay. Rightmove. Oh, gotta love them. So I did a whole video on this. And if you got my newsletter this morning, it's linked to in that newsletter as well. But that first box should read 0.0%. Okay. Under their own rules, not mine, right? Because that first box, if you go back and look through all previous Rightmove asking price announcements, that first box is the month-on-month change. They haven't changed, so that is actually January's figure, and we're in February. And so what they've said is prices stand still in February. So that should be 0. And they confirm it down here, down by just £12 or minus 0%. Okay, to £368,000. That is their national average asking price of newly listed homes for sale. And 368,000 is 100 grand, give or take, 100 grand higher than what the ONS says is the national average house price. Sellers, you listening? Collectively, in the last month, the average asking price of homes you're bringing to market in the last month is 100 grand higher than the average transaction price. Maybe if we just wait, we'll wait for the market, we'll wait for the spring bounce, wait for the summer bounce, we'll wait for the autumn bounce, we'll wait for Boxing Day bounce, we'll wait for the New Year's bounce next year. If we wait, no. I do know that that's what's always happened in the past, like with a couple of minor exceptions over the last 40 years. And therefore, I do understand that it's difficult to change your mindset from thinking, well, if we just wait, prices will go up. First of all, they aren't going to like they have in the past, right? I don't think ever again. Genuinely, I think we've seen an intergenerational peak and a trough, and it's not coming back. And secondly, if you're waiting to sell so that you can buy, what's going to happen to the price of the property that you're buying under your logic of waiting for the housing market to rise? If you're upsizing and waiting for the market to get what you need for your house so you can upsize to the next one, I mean, actually, if you are an upsizer at the moment, it's kind of going in your favor. But if you can't sell, my point is, meet the market and move, and you'll get on much better. Hi, David Holloway. Oh, laying in the sun in sunny Spain. Very, very nice. Right, so that's Rightmove. And again, the other thing on Rightmove is they announced this national average of 0% in the last year, so flat asking prices. But down here, actually, no, it's not 0% in any of the 3 sectors. First-time buyer asking prices are 0.4% lower than they were a year ago. Second stepper asking prices are 0.8% higher than they were a year ago. And top of the ladder are 0.2% lower asking prices than a year ago. And there's no data for transaction volumes separated out at these different levels. But what I can tell you is transaction volumes at the first-time buyer level are actually quite strong. And at the top of the market, they're really weak. And that's why the overall transaction volumes look like they're holding up okay. But actually what's happening is at the first-time buyer level, they're higher. And at the top of the market level, they're lower in transaction volume terms. Okay. Right. I realize I may be laboring a point here, but this is yet more unemployment, yet weaker wage growth. Home sellers, this means it'll continue getting harder and harder to sell homes at the values that you hope for. If you want to move, meet the market as soon as you can, because waiting won't work with numbers like these. And that is the overall employment market from the ONS. All right. All right, guys. Do we have any questions, any particular topics, any comments? I'm going to have a quick look through now. and get your questions up on screen. Okay, Tim Treefrog says, on the council thing, they can't look forward because their focus is on budget cuts. Right, that is precisely why they have to look forward. We're in the mess we're in now because they haven't looked forward. If your budgets are being cut beyond your own control, then looking forward becomes even more important, because if your reaction to budget cuts is spend more in the short term than it would cost to refurbish the houses. Yeah. Sarge says, removing the brakes in minimum wage simply gives the stark choice to employers of, do I employ a youngster with no experience or an older guy with experience at the same cost? The result, youth unemployment up. Correct. Kicking Mustang says, technically, economic surplus drives land/house prices. Okay. Population may fall, wages may stagnate, but the known unknown is AI and automation. That will create massive economic surplus, but when? Yeah, and your comment reminds me of in the 90s, very, very similar rhetoric around the internet and the effect the internet was going to have on the economy and on employment and everything else. And everyone's predictions were it was going to radicalize everything. And of course, it has, but it's taken a much, much, much longer to happen than anyone thought. And I think the same is going to happen now. Do I think that the effects of AI will move faster than the original effects of the internet? Yes. Why? Because the internet had a physical constraint and bottleneck to its growth, which was bandwidth, broadband availability in business. And it was expensive, and there was physical infrastructure needed. And that actually is one of the things that severely delayed the rollout of the internet. But AI, okay, there is a hardware bottleneck with AI in terms of actual GPUs, but and there's also a power bottleneck, isn't there? That's true. So there's slightly different bottlenecks, but there isn't an infrastructure bottleneck. Jacek says, question, if we're comparing this to 2008, where are we right now? 2006? Okay, this is really interesting, because there are a lot of very different factors this time around that I think means that the financial event that we are currently living in is like a slow motion thing. Weird stuff happening with gold prices, Bitcoin prices, Bank of England's liquidity buffer being all used up. No one really knows what that means, but it's a big deal. Lots and lots of talk of an AI bubble popping, massive overspending, trying to prop that up by the AI companies. Talk about pension funds being raided to help prop up house prices, unemployment rising, government borrowing rising. It's very, I mean, everyone's got the jitters. It's just like, no one knows exactly what's going to happen, what's going to trigger it, but everyone feels like something could and would happen. I mean, we are on the verge potentially of military action between America and Iran. That can sometimes have a lot of effects, but also you could argue that that's been factored into the markets a bit already. I honestly, if you said to me, Charlie, place your bets on whether there is a financial crisis like 2008, where there is a sudden collapse of the financial system, either place your money on that or that somehow we're going to squeak through and avoid such a collapse. I don't know which one of those two I would put my money on. I really don't. Because the system is showing, there was even an article in the Times or the Telegraph saying the reason that there isn't doing a stock market crash is because nobody wants one. I thought that was a really interesting piece of logic, but I get the story that they're trying to say. Like, in other words, everyone's trying to make sure that there isn't one. Everyone's wondering where to put their money. Where is it safe to put their money? There's been quite a lot of panic switching money around between different asset classes. So yeah, Chick, it's a great question. I don't think it's going to be the same as 2008. It could be. It genuinely could be. If there was a financial crisis this year, a proper one, akin to 2008, I would be unsurprised. But I'd be equally unsurprised if there isn't. It's a weird time. Too many variables, too many unpredictable variables that have an impact on it. I think it's a bit like lots of snooker balls bouncing around a table. Are they actually going to bump into each other or not? They might and they might not. If they do, there's going to be a crisis. If they don't, there won't. It's just random. Oh, Pavel BTN, this is a very good question. When viewing properties, how do you check for neighbors from hell? I feel like it's a hidden landmine that neither the agent nor the seller will ever mention openly. Yes, that is absolutely spot on. Now, just a quick couple of suggestions on this. It really makes sense, if you can, to try and go and spend like an hour or two hanging around in the neighborhood where the property is, seeing if there are people hanging around. You often find if there are older people out doing stuff in their garden or on their driveway, they're often very, very happy to chat, and you'll often get a bit of a read, a bit of a heads up on it. It is definitely worth considering and worth doing. Like, okay, I like the house, but what about the neighbors? Have a look for clues. There are clues of bad neighbors. Are the neighbors taking care of their properties? Yes or no? Do it looks like they care about them? Yes or no? Can you find out? I mean, just ask. What are who are the neighbors? How long have they lived there? That kind of stuff. It's always worth. If you are making a lifelong home purchase decision, you can't possibly spend too much time trying to make sure that you don't get bad neighbors. But don't forget, you might find out that the neighbors are all really good. Then you move in, and a year or two later, they change, and the new neighbors. It's a lottery. It's a lottery. Great question. Aldor Banner. Hi there. New name. Welcome to the channel. The current situation is like waiting for a jump scare in a horror movie, but not knowing what it's going to be or when. Absolutely right. I completely agree with that. AM02000 says, we're on the verge of a financial crisis. Yeah, people have been saying that for a very long time, haven't they? Think about it. Several years. The market crashed in the US yesterday. Did it actually crash, or just in your opinion? What do you mean? Yeah, I don't think it did, Malcolm Brownson. You're talking about interest rate hikes. Did they raise interest rates in the US yesterday? I didn't hear about that. Saul Nethersoul says, would you advise against a first-time buyer buying a flat now if we're planning to sell in the next 5 to 10 years? That's a really good question. I'll give you two answers to that. Number one, it depends on what price you can get it for. So if your offer price for a flat has priced in what you think might be the worst case scenario, and they accept it, which is unlikely, but it's not impossible, then what you're saying is, I'm only offering what I think is going to be the worst case scenario in terms of price falls in the next 5 to 10 years, or my situation, to insulate against that problem happening of not being able to sell in 5 or 10 years, or not being able to pay the mortgage off because the property values have dropped. That's one point. The other point is, it's impossible to answer without knowing whether you're a cash buyer, if you're a mortgage, what your loan to value is, what kind of flat it is, what kind of lease service charge situation it is. But generally speaking, depending on the actual apartment, if I was giving a general answer to this, right? So if you are an ordinary run-of-the-mill flat buyer You're not going to be negotiating yourself a bargain because that's just not within your skill set at the moment. And not being able to sell in 5 to 10 years if you need to would cause a real problem. Then I would say, I on the balance of all those things, I'd probably go no. I wouldn't buy. I'd rent. But again, that depends on the location, depends on the rents where you're living, it depends on your current situation, lots and lots of other things. But generally speaking, let's put it this way: I would be ultra cautious if I knew I wanted to sell in 5 to 10 years. I would be ultra cautious, and I would only buy a flat that I thought to myself, that's an absolute steal and a bargain. And they are out there in certain places. Kicking Mustang says, unemployment spike will be the trigger if it happens. If that happens, the house of cards collapses. Oh, Capricious 2000 says, in answering the checking out bad neighbors question, go there on a Friday and Saturday night. Yeah, that's good. Good call. Yeah, Kicking Mustang says there are massive inefficiencies in the economy and countless zombie companies that could be wiped out overnight by AI or automation and collapsing demand from unemployment. Yeah. Okay. Sarge says, Charlie, great idea. Have spoken to neighbours and gleaned a lot of info about the area and sellers. Yeah, it is definitely worth doing that. Kicking Mustang makes another. You're on fire today. 2008 was not a crash. It wasn't allowed to crash. We are living with the consequences of that today. Okay, so just to elaborate for those who don't know what you're talking about, what you're saying is the intervention, the government intervention, prevented the crash from being allowed to reach its full conclusion. And had that happened, whilst it would have been much more painful then, we wouldn't be living with the pain and the consequences of it today. Yeah. Angela Dressler says, morning, Charlie. I have been advised to put my house back on the market at the end of March, as I took it off at the end of October last year, as I kept reducing it. Sowerby's are my agents. Any thoughts? Yes, immediate thought number one, you've been getting very bad advice from your agent, right? They've overpriced it to begin with, or haven't advised you against overpricing it to begin with. You've kept reducing it, which means that you're chasing the market down. You've now taken it off the market, presumably because you're waiting. And that's going to make your situation worse. So my thought number one is go and find a different agent. They have let you down. A good agent's job is to get your house sold, whatever the market conditions are. You've got to remember something, guys. Agents are not responsible for the price, for the value of your house. What agents are responsible for is creating a market for your house, right? So as long as agents get qualified, proceedable, financed buyers through the door to view your house, the rest will take care of itself and you will get full market value. But genuinely speaking, it's not that simple, but that's the most fundamental thing that agents got to do. They've got to bring a house to the market in such a way that you've got it under offer, having had more than one offer to choose from. So at least two, but preferably 3 or 4 offers within 28 days. Anything less than that, and you do not have a good agent. I'm sorry, you just don't have a good agent, because any property will sell at its current market value if you bring it to the market in a way that signals to the market, we are here to find what current market value is. You don't have to accept the offers that you get at that point. But what's worse, sitting on the market with no viewings, no offers, cutting price, signaling to the market that nobody wants your house. So nobody's going to come and view it because it's been on the market for ages. Oh, we saw that one last year. What's worse, that or coming to the market at a price that attracts lots of buyers, gets lots of offers, at which point, by the way, the buyers are competing against each other. They're not competing against your marketing price. They're competing against each other, and therefore you are getting full market value. Now, in that scenario, let's imagine that you don't get the price you hoped for, but at least you know what the market for your home is and you can make a decision. At that point, you have a decision to make. Do we accept today's market value for the house and move? Or do we realize that we are not going to sell at that value and cancel our moving plans and get on with our lives staying in this place. Okay. You can't make that decision until you've got competing offers and therefore confidence that you've achieved full market value. If you sell your house with one offer, you have almost certainly sold it at an undervalue. Years of me saying this, and it makes no difference. So, Angela, I hope that helps, right? If you haven't tried it, you could try bestagent.co.uk, go to the Find Your Agent function, pop your details in there. It sends an invitation out to 20 agents. It doesn't give them your contact details, but it just invites them to respond to your inquiry, and then we convey their response back to you. And hopefully they will respond with a video message. And then you can see which one of them you want to invite around your house for evaluation. Not evaluation. Naughty. Don't say that. It's not evaluation. For a discussion about selling your house. Graham writes, this is the money printing is holding everything off for now. Graham, they stopped money printing in 2022. They haven't been printing any money since 2022. There's a common misconception that they're still money printing. In fact, since 2022, they have been unprinting money, which means they have been selling the bonds that they bought back to the market, unprinting the money. They've been doing it at a loss. So far, they've lost £100 billion, which is covered by the Treasury, by the taxpayer. So we have been paying £100 billion of taxpayers' money to fund the losses made caused by money printing. Modern monetary theory monkeys. Properties seem to be selling well where I live, especially the ones priced under 600 grand, Wickersley. Okay, thank you very much for telling us where you are. And it would also be good to know what kind of properties. Are you a first-time buyer? 600,000, I'm imagining that's like second step or top of the ladder. I don't know the area very well. And yeah, there are areas where the market's okay. It's not the whole country, right? But there are areas where, because of people moving around the country, relocating from one part to the other part, certain areas will be experiencing an uplift. Yeah, Aldo Banner. Flats are hardly selling at all at the moment. Best time to buy one, but worst time to sell one. Agreed. I wouldn't say it's the best time to buy one, because I'm not saying it would be a good buy at any price. I mean, certain cash landlords are getting absolute bargains and getting a very good cash yield because the flats are so cheap at the moment. So there are landlords making hay on those cheap flats. It's the best time there has been to buy a flat for about 10 or 12 years. Stephen on X says, do you think Fred Harrison will be right again? So Fred Harrison is the guy who's predicted the 18-year property crash cycle. He's saying that this year it's going to be much more than a property crash. It's going to be a full financial crash this year. He says it's already begun. There are videos you can go watch with him talking about it. He says it's already begun. It's underway. It's unstoppable. But the actual crash part of it, exactly when it happens and exactly what triggers it, is hard to pinpoint. Do I think he'll be right again? Again, I don't know. He could be, he could not be. I just don't know. There are too many new, unknown, unpredictable factors involved. Angela Dressler again says, I'm in North Norfolk. Now, I know that the market in East Anglia has been really weak for the last few years. With a renovated old schoolhouse, detached 3-bed, soft red building, all recently renovated with eco heating, etc., wraparound garden, not too big. Angela, I can't possibly offer you an opinion on the price. I just can't do that. You've got to go and look at the prices that the nearest comparables are actually selling for. And you've also got to remember that your renovation, whatever it cost, doesn't necessarily add that onto the market value today, because the market doesn't care when it was renovated, how much you spent, or any of those things. The market's price for your home is the market price for your home. It doesn't matter. It's like people who spend money on classic cars thinking that that's going to put value on the classic car. It doesn't. I'm afraid, Angela, you've been a victim of agents overvaluing to get your business. But those agents have won your business but earned nothing. All it's done is cost them money so far, made them look bad. What was it? Sowerby's, you said? Yeah. You see, I think Sowerby's is an old name in Norfolk. It's been there a long time. Yeah. Correct. An agent only earns money by selling your house, which is why this is so pointless. And Kicking Mustang says, I've never understood the mentality of agents overpricing. It's really simple. They think that it's how they win business off their competitors. And the number one challenge facing all agents is their competition. Not selling houses. It should be selling houses. But the number one challenge in their minds that they must focus on is winning houses so that the competition doesn't win them. Because they believe that you can't sell something you haven't listed. And although that is a technically, on the face of it, true statement, it should have lots of caveats. You can't sell a house you've listed at a too high price either. And if you don't list a house, it doesn't waste any money. If you do list a house you can't sell, it wastes lots of money. So it's a really thick mantra. You can't sell it if you haven't listed it. It's just like, it's a bit like people who think minimum wage is good for the economy. Right. Grad Physicos says, question, Charlie, what's your overview of Crawley? I remember you mentioned your family with the area looking to move there as it's the most affordable near where so I worked in Crawley once. I never lived there, but I opened my first hand car wash in Crawley, and I had a valeting contract with a big Volkswagen and Audi dealership in Crawley. They were crooks. I mean, look, Crawley is basically the dormitory town for Gatwick Airport. Aviation is not a struggling sector; it's a growth sector. You know, it's not an area that I expect to suffer. I mean, Brighton is suffering. Crawley, not so much. I don't know. I really don't know. I think go and spend time hanging out. I mean, I've known Brighton my whole life. I don't go there that often these days. I went there over New Year, and I really sensed the Brighton economy has tanked. The local economy in Brighton is really struggling and suffering compared to a few years ago. And it feels the same as it did in the early 90s when I was a student there. In 1990. That's a hell of a storm, like a wild storm, not the 87 one. Never mind. Sorry, let me move on. I was going down memory lane there. Zara Olibokus, who I believe, Zara, you're a conveyancer, aren't you? Flats are cheap for a reason. The burden of repairs will fall on the next owner. Very, very sage advice, or sage observation. Lucky to Live says, the next crash will be as a result of the current crashing car price market combined with a crash in the car finance securities, just as mortgage-backed securities caused the crash in 2008. That's an interesting observation. And the car market has definitely crashed, hasn't it? Okay, Saul Neversoul says, what are your arguments for renting not being throwing money away, and when would you suggest renting over getting a mortgage? Okay. The whole thing that renting is throwing money away is about as pointless as saying that paying interest on your mortgage is throwing money away. They're both completely true. Okay. It's a misnomer of an argument against renting because it's not throwing money away. It's buying you a place to live, isn't it? Right? In the same way that the interest you pay on the money you borrow to buy a property with, which you don't own until you've paid the mortgage off, is you handing over money and getting a place to live in return. It's the same when you're renting. It's just a different mechanic. Now, my argument against it being throwing money away is, number one, you're getting a place to live. Number two, you are not exposed to repair costs like flat owners are. You are not exposed to uncapped service charge increases. Number two. Number three, you're not exposed to falling house prices if and when they're falling. Number four, you have flexibility when life takes an unexpected turn, which you don't have when you buy. That has a real value. If you want to move house. Number five, it's much cheaper to move house when you're renting. Number six, if you buy a place, you should be budgeting 1% of its value a year for maintenance. Some years it'll be less, other years it'll be more, but in the long run, 1% a year of its value. If you were to spend that money when you're renting, investing the money that you are not spending on maintenance, repairs, etc., on service charges on a property that you've bought, and you invest it wisely and look at the long term, suddenly you start to understand why, for certain people in certain circumstances where rents are at an acceptable level of your pay, it makes much more sense to rent than buy. Now, the arguments and the calculation metrics change if you have a family and you have children, because before you have kids, if you're single and you don't have kids, and your landlord says get out, well, now you're getting 4 months notice of that. As of May, it's 4 months notice if that happens, right? For a young single person living in a flat, mostly 4 months notice is going to be enough to move house. It's a pain in the ass, right? But that's the worst case scenario. If you've got a family, it's a bit different. And that's why I think if you are planning to have a family, or if you've got a family, then there is an intangible value to the elimination of the risk of a landlord deciding to move you out. All right. So it's not just about the money. And I've always said this, it's about the move, not the money. This whole debate is about the move, not the money. It's about your life, not the money. It's about your job, your family, your friends, your career, your personal growth, your stability, your security. All of these things are non-financial considerations. And when you look at them all together, they add up to much more significance in your life than, is it cheaper to rent or buy? If you are making your moving decisions based on, is it cheaper to rent or buy? I promise you that's a mistaken approach to it. Does that answer your question? Ian Casanova, that's a good question. Are there any risks purchasing a new flat that has been converted from a commercial office building into flats? I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I would make sure you get a full level 3 survey of it. I would make sure that you look into what guarantees there are, if any. Assume there are none, by the way. I would look into the quality of the conversion. Has it been done to a high standard, or has it been a cheap, shoddy job? Great question. I don't know. Afri Naturality says, when you talk of flats, do the same issues also apply to maisonettes, e.g. a single floor in a house? No, a maison, that's not what a maisonette. A maisonette is actually a flat that's on more than one level. A single floor in a house is a flat. A maisonette is an apartment that's on more than one level, but it's still a flat, not a house. And yes, the same issues apply. There we are. Look, AM02,000 says, I've rented for years, paying 40% below market value, and landlord does everything for us. No job too big or too small. It happens. And that's actually the rule, not the exception. 75%, I did a survey, 75% of you who are tenants said you're happy. You're happy with your landlord, happy with your property. Right, guys. Time to wrap it up. Have I missed anything? I want to just actually... it's nonsense. There hasn't been a US crash, has there? I'm sorry, Malcolm. I'm sorry, I don't know what you're talking about. Okay, guys. Well, it's Friday. It's coming up on 11 o'clock. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening on the audio podcast and you've listened all the way to the end, you've listened to 54 minutes and 30 seconds of me rambling. I hope you're enjoying your long train journey that you must be on, if that's what you're doing. Don't forget the links to all the stories in the 5 Fact Friday are in the description below or in the show notes if you're listening on the podcast. Please make sure that you have got my newsletter. Did everyone get my newsletter this morning, by the way? I'd be very curious for people's comments or thoughts or observations on my thought of the week in the newsletter. If you want to get on the mailing list for the newsletter, mhwc.co.uk/newsletter, you can get it there. Otherwise, guys, if you are new and you haven't watched them, in the description below are links to my videos, my most important videos for new followers. Number 1, Charlie's 10 golden rules for home buyers. Number 2, Charlie's 10 golden rules for home sellers. Number 3, there's 5 golden rules for making an offer. Please, if you're new, go and watch those videos because that's the best condensed summary of all the advice I give for movers. If you are a seller, get your conveyancer before you choose your agent. Most conveyancers don't want to sign you up before you've got an offer accepted. My guys do. If you want to talk to my guys, mhwc.co.uk/conveyancing. And by the way, loads more of you are inquiring and using my conveyancers than you are my mortgage brokers, which I find really curious and interesting. I don't know why, but very, very happy about it. But yeah, so thank you to all of you who are using my conveyancing partners, my 2 excellent, outstanding conveyancing partners. When you put your details in the form, it can take a working day or 2 to get the response. But I'm trying to get them to improve that speed. But because these firms are good firms, they are actually both firms that occasionally can be too busy and will turn away work, but have both told me that the quality of customers that come from the Moving Home with Charlie channel is the highest quality of customers they get from any of their sources of business. And so customers coming via my channel tend to get higher priority. Tend to, not always, but tend to get higher priority. Sometimes people make inquiries and there's a situation that actually it's a weird situation and they can't help with. But generally speaking, if you are a conventional, straightforward moving situation, including moving from abroad or not, one of the 2 companies is happy to handle crypto source of funds. It doesn't automatically mean they're going to approve them, but they will look into approving source of funds if it's crypto. The other one, not so much yet, but they're going to be changing that. So if you use my south-based conveyancer, they are happy to look at crypto. If the northern-based one, not yet, but that will be changing soon. But yeah, guys, mortgages. I want to just remind everyone that the first time you find out that you've chosen a bad mortgage broker is usually 2 or 5 years after you signed up with them. Let that sink in. The first time you will realize your mortgage broker was bad is 2 or 5 years after you signed up with them, or if you need to sell unexpectedly. If you've got a bad mortgage broker, that's the time you're going to realize that you've got a bad mortgage broker. If you get a good one, that's the time you're going to be very grateful that you got a good one. Point is, it's almost impossible to tell the difference when you are a first-time user of a mortgage broker. And that is why I work currently with just one firm of mortgage brokers, because they have proved to me consistently over now 4 years that they place the quality of their client advice above everything else. And the reason for using a mortgage broker, I'm not going to go into it now, it's too long, but there are 8 different criteria or reasons or subjects or factors in your choice of mortgage. Interest rate being one and the last one. Mortgage brokers are not price comparison people. And if you think they are, you're making a mistake. And if you think they are, that's why you're like, well, why would I pay a mortgage broker fee? I wouldn't do that. That's a terrible idea. When you understand the value, the life-changingly good or bad value that you get from a good mortgage broker, you'll understand. And if you don't know how to find one, don't know how to choose one, and would like to talk to one, then I recommend getting your finances sorted out before you're going out viewing anyway. Talk to my mortgage brokers, mhwc.co.uk/mortgage. And other than that, yes, Novello surveyors, they are now, I'm working with those guys too. Thank you. I've run out of time to talk about those guys today, but I will in the next video. Thanks, guys. I'm sorry if I didn't get to your question. Yes, you can listen to this again. It's on YouTube. Watch it again from the start. Have a fantastic weekend, and I'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.